Yeah,
All 30.
collect all 31. Oh, yeah, I'm sure that would be popular.
Looks like we're live. Probably a bit of a commercial.
Yeah, we'll give it a 10 seconds or so, probably as a commercial starting up. Hi, everybody. We're here. I'll just type that in. And in a second or so, I shall press the magic button and we'll really get started. No, actually, we'll get started right now. Hi, I'm Steve Sande. This is Apple World Today TV. I'm with Mr. Marty Edwards over here. How are you
Good
this
evening.
morning,
I'm doing well.
Marty? I bet you are excited because there is a certain computer that's going to be coming out probably in 2 days or so.
Well, I was excited about it, and but there's pretty much a deal breaker for me.
What's that?
No memory hatch on the back. What you buy is what you get forever.
Wow, that is a deal breaker. Why did they do that?
I don't know. It's a. We can talk more about it a little bit later. I'm not going to say no, but I think right now, and I told my wife who had encouraged me to get this computer, I'm probably going to wait and see what the Mac Pro offering is. Not the iMac Pro, but the Mac
Yeah.
Pro offering. Because I do like to upgrade, and this is totally locked down even more than like Dennis. He his Mac, and he did a nice demo of how to add memory, and I was sure we'd be able to add memory to this, but it's totally sealed.
Yeah, that's odd. I bet that also torques off some of the companies that sell expansion RAM because there's an opportunity that's been killed or slapped in the face by Apple. So not a good thing for them to do, to be honest with you.
And of course, I'm sure everyone who watches us knows what we're talking about. The iMac Pro was announced that you can order it this coming Thursday, as in just a little over 48 hours, because it'll probably go live, I figure, midnight California time on Thursday.
Yeah, well, I can say that's one that I will not be waiting up for because I just don't need another computer right now. Maybe in a couple of years, if I'm doing a lot of 4K or 8K video editing. I don't know if you saw that, but Final Cut Pro X, FCPX, just got updated today, I think it was as well, in anticipation of the iMac Pro coming out. And would you believe it actually has an 8K editing timeline? So
I saw that. And I did watch the video. Some YouTubers got it a week ahead of the Mac, and my wife and I watched it just a while ago. And so it's a nice computer, but I really don't need that much power.
yeah. Well, the one thing I wonder, or I'm sure you looked it up, what are the memory capacities that you can actually order, the RAM capacity?
It's 32, 64, and 128. Okay. And the bottom is 32. And I probably will never need 64. But it's nice to know in a couple years, if I'm really doing a lot, that I could go to some vendor and order another 32 gig of RAM, or just 64, or even 128. Because I know if history is any indicator, theirs will be probably a quarter of the price of Apple's.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's what's kept companies like OWC going for so long is, back in the days when you can pretty much go into any Mac and upgrade the memory, whether it was a laptop or a desktop machine like an iMac or a Mac Pro for that matter. They had the RAM for it, and like you said, the price was much better than what you could get. So in those days, we'd always encourage people, hey, go ahead, buy the machine with the least amount of RAM you can, because you're going to be able to yank it out of there. Mm-hmm. And you go to OWC or some of the other vendors that are out there, buy your RAM DIMMs, and you just pop them in, and life is good, and you've saved yourself a lot of money. So
yeah,
not possible anymore.
No, and I think it's I don't want to use too harsh of a term, though a lot of forums I've read have really, or they do use harsh terms. They said that's they feel a slap in the face to, call it a pro machine and then say this is what you get forever, with it. And so I'm looking, if my face is glowing bright, I pull up the Apple site, which is really a lot.
Whoa. You're glowing all of a sudden.
Yeah, I
Actually,
know.
speaking of which, I need to move a light over because I was noticing I was getting a little flickering right down here in this corner. It's kind of flickering. That means that for some reason we're not getting enough light down there, which is odd because I'm using the same lighting that I've used every other night. But hey.
Yeah. Well, a quarter was over.
Say?
It was, I guess, some hyperbole, but I'm just checking here on the latest, iMacs that are for sale. For me to go to 64 gig is $1,400 on Apple site. But I think you mentioned OWC. I can do it there for $600. That's a pretty significant difference, because I'd already checked it.
Yeah, I had one thing I thought I'd tell our viewers too. Apple today went in and they really allegedly upped the amount of money that you can get on trade-ins. And Apple's done this for quite a few years, where you can bring in an older computer and they will basically give it to a company. I can't remember the name of the company right offhand, but anyway, they basically go ahead and they recycle it and you get cash for it. Well, the problem is I went out just for grants. I've got a perfectly good late 2015, and it was like December of 2015, so it's a 2-year-old machine. I put in the serial number for that device, and it came up and said, guess what? Your machine is worth $910. And I know darn well that I can go to other sites or even eBay and sell it for quite a bit more. So, I don't think that's a very good incentive for people like myself who might be looking at something like that, who would say, oh, if I can get $2,500, which is the max, if I can get $2,500 for this wonderful iMac that I have right now that's 2 years old, yeah, I'll drop for, another 2,500 on one of these machines, and it ain't going to happen. $910 just is not enough.
Well, if I enter my serial number in, they're going to charge me for the Mac probably to return.
Yeah, you pay us $1,000 to take that away from you. Probably.
Yeah, I guess I won't say I'm disappointed, but I never dreamed that they would lock down the memory upgrades, especially since the 5K iMacs from this summer had the memory hatch. I just was sure this would. I didn't expect to be able to change out the hard drive and things like that. So I really think I'm going to wait. Everything I got's working. And so I don't need a computer right now, but mine are really long in the tooth, as they say, and could use a little bit more horsepower. But I want to wait and see what the Mac Pro offering is. If it's going to be a new trash can version, are we going to have a cube or, rectangle this time, or what we're going to
maybe
have?
It'll look like a recycle bin, one of the big plastic ones you get from
but I'm hoping from their comments when they said that they were in error with the previous one, they'll make it really upgradable, or where you can put in your own hard drive or memory or your graphics card, yourself. So I guess I'll say mildly disappointed, but not really. It made the decision easy because, I was really pretty close to go ahead and maybe get it pretty soon. But that let me know definitely to wait, because I'd planned on this being an investment, probably for at least 5 years on the computer. Who knows, maybe 10. My powerhouse Windows over here, it's a little over 10 years old now. Still works great. It's one I, custom built everything, motherboard, memory, and all. And so it's still going great. So it's a little over 10 years. So I could see with a $5,000 computer going 10 years with it. But the thought that I'm locked into 32 gig of RAM or whatever I get from them first is not as palatable.
Yeah. And you don't want to, like you said, go out there and spend an extra $1,500 to bump it up to 128, or probably $3,000 to get it to
Probably.
256. So,
Yeah.
even though that probably would help the resale value down the road, but, uh-uh. So I just, yeah, that's another one of those design uh, decisions that they've been making lately that really kind of make me wonder what the heck is going on there.
Well, I
You
really
know,
think it's the bottom line. They don't want money going to competitors for memory and such like.
yeah, but
And my wife and I were talking about it earlier, and she just plainly commented, they don't want you spending money at other places, and they really don't. And
yeah.
but if they're not careful, some people are going to be driven to lesser machines or the professionals that can work either one. Some will go to comparable built Windows machines.
Or build a Hackintosh. And
Yeah.
I always, if I honestly today, if I was going to say, wow, I really need a super powerhouse of a machine, I would do a Hackintosh. I would absolutely do it. There are a couple of absolutely great sites. I've got to see if I can remember this. I think it's called TonyMacX86.com. And I'm going to check that because I'm probably off in one letter or not, something there. But let me check here.
Now you can educate me and maybe help others. A Hackintosh is basically running the Mac operating system on a non-approved hardware, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and this is it is Tony Mac, so TonyMac x86.com. And this site is absolutely great because what it does is it kind of takes you through cases. It takes you through motherboards that you can buy. It takes you through CPUs that you can buy, graphics cards that you can buy. And then they have an application that's called Unibeast. And what Unibeast lets you do is you actually take your Mac App Store purchased copy of macOS High Sierra, and you create a bootable USB drive. And that bootable USB drive has all the drivers that would be used for High Sierra, for the other cards, the other CPUs that you're going to be using in this Hackintosh. And a lot of the, I've gone out to the site before and gone to their forum, and you'll get some of these people are saying, oh yeah, I took, this 18 core processor and stuck it in here, and I've got 512, a terabyte of RAM, and huge drives and things like that. And I paid $2,800 for it. The prices are incredibly low because you're buying a kit that a lot of people will go to a local computer store. I'm trying to think of the name here. God, I can't think of it. But anyway, we've got this one great store in town that sells a lot of these things. They sell the power supplies, the motherboards, the chips, everything you could possibly imagine for building your own. And so essentially what you're doing is building a really powerful Windows machine, and then you're running Mac OS on it. So great stuff. Highly recommend TonyMacX86.com.
Well, a lot of people that have the know-how are certainly, will probably go routes like that. And, I've always been a builder, but I've decided here lately, I don't fool with building too much. I just will replace components if I need to. But of course, if you get into the Apple ecosystem or the hardware, you're pretty well locked down. And so,
yeah. My first experience with a Hackintosh was back in, I think it was 2008. My wife and I had a trip planned where we were going to be going to Africa in 2009, February of 2009. And I wanted to bring a computer along, both for backing up a lot of the photos and videos that we were taking. But I also, thought, well, on occasion, I'll probably be in a location where I can, send email or do something like that. But I didn't want to bring a Mac simply because you're kind of in a really interesting foreign country or, foreign countries, I should say. And, I didn't really want to spend a lot of money on a computer that might be stolen. So what I did is I went out and I bought a little Dell, one of these tiny little Celeron Atom, whatever type laptops for like $289 and installed OS 10 on it. I'm trying to remember what version it was in 2009. It's quite a while ago. But anyway, got it up and running, and it worked just great as a Mac while I was on the trip.
That's interesting. So, yeah, I saw something else today, sort of along with this. It seems it's sort of an odd statement. It was posted today at 9:32 California time. Phil Schiller, he's the vice president of hardware at Apple. He said an iPad can both supplement and replace the Mac. I don't see that at all, replacing the Mac.
Yeah, either do I. And after arguing that you could for 2 years, I don't think so. I think it supplements it very, very well. Replace it? Nope.
Well, I've got at least maybe one or two apps on here that are impossible on a Mac. One, I have a server where that I can broadcast live, live audio if I want to, for whatever reason. I've used it many times connected with church. People can log on to my IP address. I open a port and, I can handle probably hundreds of listeners. And, there's no way you can do that on an iPad because, you can't get back into it. I have VNC running so I can backdoor into this one from, another place, and simply cannot do things like that. So I think they're really thinking about for media consumption and the such like. There's no way it can be a server, whereas this can. So I thought that was, I won't say an odd statement, but I think they're trying to push, and I know you've seen all the sites have really been critical of that Apple commercial where the little girl's using an iPad and the mother refers to a computer. And she said, "What's a computer?" It's a 10-year-old girl. And of course, all the pundits are saying, if you don't know what a computer is by age 10, you need to.
Yeah, there's something wrong with you. Yeah. You need to go to one of the coding classes at your Apple store.
But I think they're really pushing the iOS devices, and people vehemently disagreed with him, but I still think he made a good point. I know John Dvorak, the name. He wrote this week. I thought he had died. No, I'm kidding. He's been around so long. I thought I didn't even know he was still living. Of course, I'm kidding if he's watching. He's one of my early reads in computer things. He's been around since times of antiquity. But I didn't think he died, but I didn't know he was still around, honestly, till he was quoted this week. And he said that he thought the Mac would disappear with time. And of course, other sites
he's been saying that for 30 years.
But I think Apple's pushing it to try to make it a niche thing that, okay, we'll make a new one if we have to, but that's not really our interest. And I'm afraid.
Yeah, but they're at an all-time high market share. They're selling more than they ever have before. I don't think they're pushing for a niche.
Yeah. I agree, but it still makes me wonder, like, why Phil Schiller would say that and why they locked down the iMac Pro so much, So I'm going to have to wait for the next computer.
Well, the one thing I always try to think like why would they make this stupid decision? And then I started thinking, okay, Steve, think like an Apple executive. Why would you do this? Well, you brought up a cynical answer, which is, hey, we can sell, a tremendous amount of RAM for $1,500, whereas if they went out and installed it themselves, they'd buy it for $750 and we'd lose all that income. But I think one other thing that they may actually look at is, they know what people do to machines. For instance, when they are taking a look at, we know that we've sold, let's say, 1 million 27-inch iMacs with Retina display of this particular model type, and most of them were sold with 16 gigabytes of RAM. If we go out now and we look at some of the statistics that we're able to get from crash logs, from installation logs, different things like that, that, they can anonymize. They may be looking at it and saying, oh, isn't this interesting? Only, 3% of all those people out there who bought that machine actually put more RAM into it.
That's a good point.
So, they may look at it as people don't want to do this anymore. They just want to be able to buy a machine, bring it in, plug it in, and go for it. Now, like you said, it really, where it grates is on the people who make the most noise about it, because we're the people who work with these things. And I mean work, we're not just, putting an expensive computer on our desk because it looks good. We work with them day in and day out. And I think that's the group of people that they're kind of, if you'll pardon the expression, pissing off, because, that lack of expandability. It started with the MacBooks, and has just kind of gone down the road here. And, what do you, I think the next thing we'll probably see is, if they ever get around to coming out with a new Mac Mini, it'll probably be a sealed box, that you won't be able to change anything with, probably come with SSD and a certain amount of RAM built into it. And there's your computer. Mm-hmm. And hopefully probably it's this size. Yeah. If they're gonna do it, make it this small and just put a couple of, Thunderbolt 3 ports on it.
Well, one of the reasons I think I'm going to wait for the Mac Pro and just see what it is, what they offer, is because I can't upgrade the other, and $5,000 is a lot of money to spend. If you think, if I got it, I would keep thinking, I wonder if I like the Mac Pro better. I'd hate to get to that point and say, oh, I wish I'd waited. So I think I am going to wait. And I really do like my monitors. They're not 5K. They're not 4K. They work, though. I've used them for eons. I like them. I like my mouse and keyboard. I've gone over it before. I have one of the old-time IBM 101 click-clack mechanical keyboards. Oh, I love it. That's the only way I can type. I've got to have that mechanical click. It's huge. No telling how many pounds this thing weighs. And I like it. I've got it plugged in and it works great. As a matter of fact, this will take you back. I think I'm having to look here. It's a round DIN plug on it. And I had to use an adapter to make it work in the Mac. It works.
Whoa. Hey, speaking of mechanical keyboards, I got one to test today. Came in from a manufacturer, and I had reviewed one of their keyboards about a year ago, and they've come out with a new version of it. Moved a couple of keys to make it a little bit better. But it's a mechanical keyboard that can either be used wirelessly or wired, which is kind of a nice feature. Sometimes you have to have that wired connection. For instance, if you're reloading a machine from scratch, and sometimes it just won't find a keyboard, so it's nice to have something you can plug in. But it was funny. It's a mechanical keyboard, definitely has the big switches on there, and strangely enough, I like the previous version of it better because it seemed to have less play in the keys than this one does. This one, I feel like I'm going, to actually type on things. I'm kind of getting to the point that I like a minimum amount of play in keyboards. This is something I give it a pretty good review because it is a good keyboard. But this is the bridge keyboard for the 10.5 inch iPad Pro. And I've got two complaints about it. First is that it doesn't use the smart connector. So you have to charge it up. And of course, already it ran out of battery once, which really torqued me off because I was right in the middle of using it. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden it, kind of died there. I also hate the delay with Bluetooth keyboards like this, especially when using them with an iOS device, because sometimes you wait for 3 or 4 seconds for it to actually understand that there's somebody pounding on the keyboard trying to type onto that iPad. And what was the other thing I hate about it? Oh, this one, you really have to hit the keys hard in order to do something. So I hate to say it, but I think this one is going to be destined. It is a good keyboard, but it's probably going to be destined to the recycle bin of history. And I'm probably going to end up getting one of Apple's smart keyboards.
Well, I have never liked wireless mice or keyboards. I guess I'm old school, but I liked everything plugged in, that quick instant feedback. I've done it before,
Yeah.
but to show our viewers if they've never seen it, this is the keyboard that I'm using. Does that look
And
familiar?
that is a beauty.
Oh, I love it.
I love that thing.
You can still buy it brand new. There's a place in Kentucky here in Lexington that makes these brand new. And
well, didn't IBM used to have a plant in Lexington?
Mm-hmm. And this, if anybody's interested, I'll definitely mention, but I'll probably knock myself off the air here. But listen to this. Can you hear the clicks? I mean, it's mechanical. And no telling what I just did. I probably shut down half that. But let me look at the back. This is called Unicomp, UNICOMP. And it's about $100. I think it was $99. And I liked it so well, I bought the factory. No, that's a guy with the razors in it.
Yeah. I liked it so well, I bought the factory.
I bought the company. He said, I liked it so well, I bought two. Because second computer, but I was afraid it'd run out. And they do make a Mac version. This is the PC version. And the one problem with this, it doesn't have the command key on it that the Mac keyboards have. So if I ever have to boot into the the recovery menu or the utility menu
mode
and that, I have to plug a Windows keyboard into it that has the Windows key, the actual Windows logo, or I've got a Mac keyboard back here I can plug into it and get into it. So I cannot get into that screen with this keyboard, but I just plug it into another port, get into it, then switch back to this one. But I love this keyboard. I love the feel. If I'd gotten the iMac Pro, I imagine this would have been the keyboard with it. Wouldn't it have been, strange? But that space gray keyboard was nice.
Well, I tell you, if you ever want a Mac keyboard that is mechanical, makes all that nice clicky clacky noise and all that good stuff, there's a company, Matias, Matias, that makes excellent keyboards. I know a lot of people who, that's all they'll use. Same type of people as you. They like the loud feedback. Frankly, it drives me nuts. But anyway, they like that loud. I used to love getting on the phone with Erica Sadoun when we were writing books together, and we'd have these long conversations. And I'd be quietly typing on my Mac keyboard, and I could hear her. Just drove me crazy while we were doing that.
Well, I've used that kind of feedback so much, I find it hard to type fast. I've always been, I think, a fairly fast typist, and I use that feedback just to really, I know when it hits and go on to the next key. I've done it so long, and I really like that loud feedback. I've just gotten so accustomed. Maybe it's because my first what we call typing class was on a mechanical keyboard, nothing plugged in.
Yeah,
all the power's from right here.
Yeah. Speaking of. Oh, how exciting. I always love this. Zoom, the people who were using this from, I just got an email from them. Hi, you just got in and you may have received an invoice in error from us. Well, I didn't, so no problem. I always love these emails like that. You may have, we may have really goofed up here, but then again, maybe not. But anyway, Matias, the one thing I was going to bring up about them is earlier this year, at one point, we were kind of joking about having him actually make a keyboard or work with him on a keyboard that would be like a touch, touch bar type keyboard, except with maybe having the top row of keys being actual, touch keys instead of just having the bar up there. and a group of us got together and we were talking about it. And then we realized that the biggest issue with that was getting the little displays that we would put into the keyboard. It got really, really expensive. Unless you're, producing 100,000 or 500,000 of these things,
Right.
it gets really, really expensive. So we ended up saying, let's forget it.
Yeah. Well,
But it's at, in case anybody wants to look them up, it's Matias, MATIAS.ca. They're a Canadian firm.
I already looked them up while you were speaking there. So I made sure I denoted it because I do like these keyboards. I guess, anybody else, if I was working side by side, it might drive them crazy. But of course, you worked for IBM. You remember those original PCs. This is not one of those, but it's, the layout is. Those things were heavy, weren't they? The keyboards.
Yes, they were. Well, and the PCs were ridiculous too. I mean, seriously, I think a lot of them, when they reached the end of life, they became literal boat anchors because you could tie one to a heavy chain, throw it overboard, and it could hold a super tanker in place.
Yeah, exactly. It could. I of course, you're amateur radio operators as I am as well, and I actually ran for eons before had internet. I'm sure you're familiar with the packet radio system.
Oh, yes.
And bulletin boards over the air. I actually ran one of those on a PC probably until less than 10 years ago. I ran it for years and years, and it was run on an original IBM PC and with the keyboard, and it never stopped running. I just finally, with the advent of the internet, packet wasn't used anymore, so I finally took it down.
Yeah.
So
packet was fun.
It was fun.
I didn't do much of it, but it was one of those things that if you could try it out, you said, oh, this is pretty cool. Sending really sending data over radio frequency rather than the internet, and it was fascinating.
Well, it was because we in our area, I didn't have any internet then. Really wasn't even familiar with it, so we could send actual data and pictures and executables over the air, and it was pretty amazing. And ham radio operators, amateur operators, are doing that today, but they tend to use like routers. They're reprogramming to use various amateur frequencies. And if we ever have a big time emergency where the infrastructure is down, things like that will come back into play quite a bit. So I'll try to stay up on it a little bit.
Yeah, I still need to buy myself a new radio one of these days. Or actually, what I may do is my poor dad, quite elderly, doesn't really remember how to use a lot of his ham radio equipment. And I've got a FM transceiver sitting right next to me, and as well as a high frequency transceiver that's sitting there. So problem is I can't put up a antenna in this neighborhood. There's something called those good old restrictive covenants. Boo.
Well, we live out on a farm, and I can put anything up I want as long as it doesn't exceed FCC heights. And I had an antenna, but I don't utilize it now, so I can put up anything that I want. But part of it is age and time. I can't climb a tower. You wouldn't have me on a show anymore if I climbed the tower because
it'd be like, we are sad to, dearly departed Marty Edwards.
That's what it would. That's what it would be.
So don't do it, please.
No, don't worry. Last time I even worked on something like that, I got up on the house and I thought, if I ever get down, that's it. And I did. But anyway, back to the Apple stuff. So any other exciting announcements today? Seemed like there was something else that I wanted to bring up on our broadcast tonight that I thought would.
Well, I was going to throw out one interesting piece of information that has nothing to do. Well, it does if you happen to be an Apple fan who uses drones. And the FAA drone registration law is back in force. This is something that I think it was in 2016, the FAA said, hey, we want people who are buying drones that they're flying outdoors that weigh between 0.55 pounds and 55 pounds to register these things with the FAA. The reason being that if somebody takes one of these and they crash it into an airplane and the airplane crashes and hundreds are killed, we can look up the serial number on that device and we can say, we know that we're going to go out and we're going to, we're going to send the SWAT teams over to Marty Edwards' house. And
I don't have a drone. That's him.
But anyway, then there was a guy by the name of, I'm trying to remember it. It was a very plain name, like, Bob Johnson or something like that. But anyway, this guy sued the government. Basically, it went to court. A judge threw out the law. And of course, the FCC or FAA is saying, hey, we still, we think this is for the public good, for public safety. It's a really good idea to have a registry of these devices. So they went the other route, which is they actually went through Congress, had a bill passed, which it's amazing that they agreed on anything. But anyway, they passed the bill and it got signed into law today. So it's official and it's working again. So it takes 3 minutes and $5, literally, to get a drone registered. So anybody out there who either is thinking of buying one or already has one and it's not registered and it's within that 0.55 to 55 pound range, get thee to registermyuas.faa.gov today and get it done.
Well, that's good information to know.
Did you like that?
I did. And
if
that
this
made
was
me
3D,
think.
it would be coming right out of the screen.
Oh, my. But that made me think that before we come together again next week, we're going to have a vote on net neutrality.
Oh, you're right. That's the 14th, isn't it?
2 days.
That's going to be very interesting to see how that comes out, because there's kind of two ways to look at it. Somebody brought up a really good point that up until, 2007 or 2008, that's what we had, no net neutrality. And then they passed these alleged net neutrality laws, and now they're just backing off of them. It's really not, taking anything away. It's basically putting them back to the way it was in 2008 or 2009. I don't know about you, but I don't remember any major issues back in the 2000s with internet service being ridiculously expensive like it is today under alleged net neutrality laws. So.
Yeah, I know. There's really little difference, and some may vehemently disagree. But there's a good article on ZDNet by a guy named David. Is it Gertowitz or something? You probably know the guy I'm talking about, possibly. But he had a really good article and really got into the details of what the proposal actually says. And he says, if you really read it, it's not going to have that much of an effect. That was the bottom line. You're probably not going to notice much difference. I think a lot of it is just gloom and doom and naysayers that want to be loud,
Yeah. And I mean, it has, nobody said a word about it when these net neutrality laws went into effect. And to be honest with you, I take a look at the cost of my internet service, which really hasn't improved all that much in terms of speed or reliability in those 9 or 10 years. And it's gone up a tremendous amount. So I don't know. We'll see. I think the way that the current FCC is looking, this went from FAA to FCC, but the way the current FCC is looking at it is, let's let the market make the prices. And, all these people are saying, oh my God, they're going to make it so expensive. You're going to have to buy everything a la carte, blah, 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 blah. Well, yeah, maybe they will. But what you're going to end up with is kind of like what you see with the wireless carriers right now. You can go to, some small carriers. You can go to carriers I'm trying to remember what they call them, but the
MNVOs.
thank
Yeah.
you. God, you're good. MVNOs. Yeah, the virtual network operator, so to speak, mobile virtual network operators. But you take a look at them, and they're offering pretty much identical service to the big carriers on their networks for a hell of a lot less. And I think what you're going to end up seeing is something very similar to that, where, maybe you're going to have, Comcast internet service for $125 a month at, 45 gigabits per second or something. But then you'll be able to go, probably wouldn't even be 1 gigabit per second because mine isn't. Anyway, let's not talk about that. But anyway, I'm guessing what'll probably happen is you'll get somebody who'll say, we'll use their wires. We'll act as a MVNO over wire, whatever they happen to be. And, we're going to offer that same service for, instead of $125 a month, it's going to be $40 a month.
And the reason they can do that,
jump to it.
Yeah, they can buy in bulk. Well, just an example, like Cricket Wireless, which is in this area, I think they use AT&T's towers. They're offering 4 lines for a total of $100 unlimited data. Now, you will be throttled after 22 gig, but that's a lot of data, 22 gig.
That's a heck of a lot of data.
My wife and I, we're about to recycle for this month. We're only slightly over 2 gig. We go out and freely use. I never watch it because we do have an unlimited plan. And so you can get some really good prices from the MVNOs. And if you want to go to one, they all let you port your number.
Yeah. And, but I think it's going to be that way with a lot of things. If some people were saying, well, you're going to have to pay by the post on Facebook. I doubt it. Facebook doesn't want to go out of business. Somebody else would come into their place. They're not going to change their model.
No, and if they did, the market will correct itself. Competition's good.
Yeah. And maybe somebody else comes in and says, hey, maybe Facebook is going to charge 5 cents per post that you make on there, but guess what we're going to do? We're going to make it 2 cents per post, and we're not going to, run all these advertising algorithms against all the posts you make and know everything about you. And I'd jump to a company like that in a heartbeat.
Yeah. But you make a good point. I think a lot of people need to keep in mind, if we go back to repeal net neutrality, we're only going back to the way it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago and before, I didn't think it was that bad. I couldn't tell any difference either way,
Exactly.
And so it'll a lot of self-correcting things will be in there. I know what I was going to bring up earlier. Did you see where the new iMac Pro is going to have a secure enclave chip called the T2?
Yes, I did. The Terminator 2.
I saw you wrote that. Yeah.
But yeah, isn't that cool? That's, because a lot of people thought they were going to put like an A10 or an A11 chip in there. And instead it's something similar. But it sounds like it's going to not only provide that secure enclave, but also like do video processing for the built-in camera up here, which I'm hoping on the iMac Pro will be. Wouldn't it be great if it was 4K camera?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's hope. Anybody said anything about that yet?
I don't think so. I'm hoping that after Thursday, some will get their hands on them and really start. I want to see some YouTube reviews. I mean, there are a few out there already, but I want to see. I guess the non-popular YouTubers that received theirs gratis, I know they had good reviews, but the others will be probably more brutal to it, and say, oh, this is great or this is not great. When you have to pay the money, they don't care.
Yeah. Yeah, but you can say anything you want about it when you pay the money. When you get something for free, you kind of have that tendency to want to gloss it over a little bit. Although I have to admit, I have given products like 1-star reviews when they've been really, really crappy, even though they've been free, because it's just like, I don't want anybody to have to buy this.
Yeah.
I think I may have given it a 4-star. I every day that I use it, it goes down like another tenth of a star. So sorry,
Yeah.
Bridge.
Well, I received, I won't even mention the name because I don't remember it, but wanted me to review a game on iOS for Apple World today, and I got the game. It was so poor, I didn't even do the review. I felt sorry for him.
Ooh,
Yeah, I didn't want
ooh.
to put it out there. And, you know, I don't mind pointing out some negatives, but there wasn't any positives. And so,
Yeah.
sometimes that happens, unfortunately, but people usually get everything together and make it better later.
Yeah, there was I remember, I think it was when I was still at Tua, there was a guy who approached us and said, I've got this educational game that, I think is going to be a killer, wow, it's going to be the best thing you've ever seen. And I volunteered. I said, yeah, I'll take a look at it because it had something to do with the Civil War. And I thought, this will be kind of a, cool thing to look at and just see how historically good it is and everything. And it was literally, I could have written a better app, and I'm not a developer, but give me a week and I probably could have written something as bad as this. And it was, it was one thing. I finally sat down, I wrote a letter to the developer and I said, I'm not going to write a review of this because if I did, you would be very, very unhappy. The reason, I mean, it was like a 30-page email I sent to him if you wanted to
Wow.
look at it that long. But I told him everything that was wrong with the app. And I said, if this is your first attempt at writing an application, unless you really want to go in and change this thing and do a lot of work and make it a workable application, I suggest you get out of the business. Never heard from him again. So I think he did go out, just decided to give up.
It sounds like he just got out of the business. So,
And it was sad because I think the idea was good, just really bad execution, man. Oof.
I think we've gotten to the point we expect apps to be absolutely flawless,
Yeah.
and visually appealing. I think that's one of the things I do like. I do use Apple and Android as well. I tinker with Android quite a bit. I just, I like the look and flow. I find iOS more visually appealing. It's a lot better eye candy.
Yeah.
I won't necessarily do it tonight, but maybe next week. I want to retouch on an app that you had written a review about a few months ago. It was a new weather app called Storm Radar. It's actually by IBM. It was really having a lot of issues at the time, crashing and all, and they really, really improved it in the last few weeks, months even. And it's got some good features that whenever we're ready for another weather app with winter here.
I like that. Yeah. And we're ready for another weather. I love weather apps.
Oh, I do too.
They make me happy.
I actually have one entire folder called Weather. Oh, your review is great. It was, as the British say, spot on. But
spot on.
Yeah,
let's have a bit of tea.
But they have improved it so much. I thought it deserved another look and added some features.
Cool. Yeah, and that's one thing I always do too. Sometimes I'll get an app or something, and I'm just kind of like really unenthusiastic about it, and then the next version comes out, and you get a kind of a better feel for it. You go, wow, maybe this isn't as bad as I thought it was, and they fixed some of the things that I hated. Oddly enough, one app that I still think is great, even though I've kind of abandoned it for Bear. But one app that I absolutely used to use, probably used it for 3 years in a row, was Ulysses. And honestly, when that app first came out, I thought it was crap. And it gradually, these guys kept perfecting it, fixing the problems, updating the user interface, and now it's an absolutely phenomenal app. I just found another one that kind of fit my workflow a little bit better, so I abandoned it.
Well, I'll just mention that Storm Radar, that if you want to re-review it, feel free. But if maybe in a week or two, we'll do it on during our show, I can show some things about it. It's got a lot of nice features. Lightning alerts, earthquake alerts, or shows where earthquakes are. So,
Oh, that's cool. I like the fact that they put the earthquakes in there because
Yeah, it's not an alert. It just shows where they're at. And I've actually got an earthquake alert app that we'll check out sometime. I actually do not run that many apps. I find a core of apps I really like and, just keep my phone pretty thin. I've got a 256 gig phone, and I checked before the show, and I still have 205 or 10 free. And so,
I wonder when I've got to take a look at the old iPhone 10 here real quick. I was just sitting here wondering how much memory I've got.
how are you liking the phone after a couple of weeks now?
I'm really liking it. The apps that have been rewritten to take advantage of Face ID, it's magical, being able to open up something and you glance at the screen and it goes in. One of the banking apps that I use did that. And I love it, because it used to be you had to go in and Touch ID was it would work sometimes and it wouldn't work sometimes. For some reason, they seemed to fix all the problems, all the issues when they went to the iPhone 10 because it just really works great. Well, this is great. Yeah, I've got, you're going to love this. I've got 209 gigabytes left. I need to offload movies onto here or something like that.
Well, that's almost exactly what I have. And I have some videos on here that I'm getting ready to, I will actually pull off. But I did not, as you know, so I'm in the mode of passing things. I did not go with the iPhone 10, nor am I going to go with the iMac Pro. So I keep passing on things here. Out of 256, I'm using 51 gigs, so I have 205. So you and I are right in the same neighborhood.
Well, you talk about passing on things, and I think I mentioned, drones, getting a drone and doing all the rest of this fun stuff. And I actually sold two what they call selfie drones. They're, pretty small. You can fly them inside, very safe, all the rest of that stuff. But I sold those, and I ended up just recently getting that DJI Spark, which is the smallest device that DJI makes. You can do this, what I call the Jedi moves. You can do gesture control, or you can control it with an iPhone, or you can control it with an actual controller. But the funny thing about it was the reason I ended up getting that, I had, some friends who were saying, gosh, I thought you would have gone for one of the more expensive models. And the reason I'm doing this is two reasons. First, I want to have a machine that I can really get out and abuse and learn and, just kind of get my flight hours up and running there. And without spending a lot of money. And the other thing is, I'm pretty darn sure that come January, which is coming in about 2 or 3 weeks here.
Yeah.
After CES, we're probably going to find out about some new DJI drone. So why buy something big and expensive when I could wait until next year and get the same thing? Exactly kind of what you're doing with the Mac Pro instead of the iMac Pro.
Yeah. I do like a modular system. I do like to tinker and put in drives or change out the memory. I don't mind doing that at all. As a matter of fact, I enjoy it. So I think if I get that Mac Pro, it'll just set right where the Mac Mini is, and Mac Mini will be delegated to server duties.
Well, what I'm really hoping, though, is that, maybe they delay things a little bit there in terms of coming out with the Mac Pro, the replacement Mac Pro in 2018, and that you decide that you are going to build a Hackintosh and you're going to write this great series about it for Apple World Today.
Yeah. I don't know. Apple don't want you doing that, do they?
They don't frown upon it because, and actually they can't really frown upon it these days because you are using an officially licensed version of iOS. I mean, excuse me, of Mac OS. It's just that this company or this group out there, it's actually a group of volunteers. They don't make any money off of it. But what they do, their app takes that version of Mac OS and it adds in additional drivers and things that will make it boot up. So
it'd probably balk at a 10-year-old Windows computer.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, you just want to go to Micro Center. That's the place I was thinking of earlier. We have a Micro Center here in Denver, and I tell you, it's nerd heaven because you can go in there and there are just boxes full of CPUs. And you go, oh, look at this! It's a 24 core, blah blah blah. You can pick one up and take it home.
Sounds like my kind of place to visit.
Micro Center is truly a fun place. I used to, when I was doing a lot of consulting, you always had those situations where maybe you were wiring a network closet or something, and you suddenly realized, oh my God, I need patch cables. And get in the car, run over to Micro Center, pick up like 50 cables or whatever, run back to the client, throw the stuff in there. Wonderful place.
It used to be more like that, around here, but a lot of them are fading out because everybody orders everything now,
Yeah, it's got to be difficult, for a lot of these companies to actually have the cost of a store, a storefront and paying employees when, you could do anything through e-commerce and, pretty much sell the exact same products. But in a way, I still like those old facilities because you could go in there and you'd say, I need a blah, 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 blah cable. And the guy would go, well, we don't have those on the floor, but let me check in the back. And go out back, and he'd come back, and this thing's all covered with dust. $4.99.
Exactly. Yeah. So, well, we're knocking on the door of an hour, but I will mention probably next week, I feel like much of our discussion, the iMac Pro is going to be out in the wild.
Yeah.
And so we'll have a lot more information. So I do look forward to that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a fun discussion. Once we see a lot more, information about it out there. Just trying to think of that's pretty much it. iMac Pro, HomePod, of course, we're waiting until next year now. But I think that's going to be a good topic of discussion next week. We can really hit it in detail, both do a lot of research after people get their hands on them. And actually, I think what I may do is go down to my local Apple store on the 14th and see if they have any on the floor.
I thought I would check and see if our quote local Apple store had any by sight on the app here and just see, but I wouldn't go to look at it because it's a 71-mile drive or so,
I wouldn't do that.
If I'm not going to buy it. It's always sort of been fun buying from a store at that distance. It's close enough. I can be there in an hour and a half, of course, city driving and everything, and it takes a little while. Whenever we get there, but it's sort of fun. I've ordered things like when we got my wife her MacBook Pro, ordered it on the app. We went up to get it, and about halfway up there, got an email: "Your order is ready." And you go in.
Isn't this fun?
Yeah, they just scan your phone and bring it out to you. It's pretty neat, really. So.
Yeah, speaking of which, I still haven't picked up the Apple TV 4K. The other part, the Watch Air antenna and DVR thing that I was talking about last week, it did show up. I still haven't opened it up, but I'm hoping I can get that maybe tomorrow or Friday.
I'd like to see a review of that because that piqued my interest,
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's going to work for some of the local channels, so we'll be able to do that and go from there.
All right. Well, we'll probably have a few good topics to discuss next week.
I hope so. Yeah, it's been, this time of year is always kind of funny because December gets really quiet, and then January, you have all the CES announcements, and there's maybe, of this much, there's maybe about that much that's really specific to Apple. Uh, and then sometimes Apple uses CES to, they'll make an announcement at the same time it's going on, just to really torque off everybody who's spending thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of dollars to exhibit there. So you might be surprised. We might hear something from them.
Well, we'll talk more about this maybe next week. But you see, a company has developed the under the screen Touch ID, and it's going to be used as a top 5 OEM. They said they had that quote perfected, and so
top 5. So that probably means Huawei, Xiongfao, or whatever the heck the name of that one company is.
Could be Samsung, yeah. Synaptics makes available in-display fingerprint sensor to a top 5 manufacturer. So it's not going to be Apple, most likely. So they apparently have it working and working well. It's probably going to show up somewhere next year. And, I was reading today, Apple might eventually go that route, but keep Face ID for people who want alternate, methods of authentication. But anyway, I digress and introduce new materials. We're getting ready to close here.
Well, I tell you, after using Face ID for whatever it's been now, a month, 2 months, I wouldn't go back. It really is much, much faster. It's much more accurate. When I shaved off when I had my big puffy beard, shaved it up, had no problems. Still knew it was me. I love that one ad, by the way. If anybody hasn't seen this 15-second ad, it's about Touch ID or Face ID, and it's a time lapse of this guy. He's cleanly shaven and he grows a long beard and it shrinks back up. And it's almost scary, but really a lot of fun. 15 seconds.
I've seen the ad you're talking about, or at least saw a clip of it, but haven't watched it yet. So,
yeah, good stuff. Well, we'll be back next week, of course, at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. And as usual, we will put this, the show will become available as soon as we quit yapping here. It'll be out on YouTube. Tomorrow, which is Wednesday, we'll have a post sometime probably mid-morning, which will lead other people to watch this. If you've subscribed to the Apple World Today YouTube channel, we thank you. And if you haven't, we ask for you to do that, because we're going to probably be using a little bit more video in 2018. And for Apple World Today and AWT TV, I'm Steve Sande saying goodbye. Marty?
So long. See everyone next week.
So long. Farewell. Auf Wiedersehen. Let's get out of here. Talk to you later, Marty.
See ya.